If you want to build and play a sneaky, backstabby, and downright terrifying rogue in Pathfinder 2e, then this video is for you. Welcome to D4. Hi everybody. So here at D4, each week we take a deep dive into one, sometimes two, specific character builds for our favorite TTRPGs. D&D, Pathfinder, we crunch numbers about them, we theorycraft about them, not so that I can tell you the right way or the best way to build and play the character, but to explore one potential way of building and playing them with the hopes of creating something that is both really powerful but also really fun to play. So if you enjoy building characters for RPGs almost as much as you enjoy actually playing the game itself, or if you're just looking for tips or ideas on a character you're thinking about creating, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I'm really glad you're here, so thank you for being here. Welcome to the new digs. I've actually been in this office for quite some time. It's where I work and edit and write, but I kind of wanted to get out of the house for recording purposes. Well, it's just taken me a while to decorate. But now that I've finally got everything set up like I want it, I'm happy to be using this as my do-all, be-all kind of studio room. So thanks in advance for your patience while I kind of tweak with the lighting and the sound. I'm kind of figuring it all out still. Let me know your thoughts about it, especially if you've got educated suggestions on how to improve things. So one of my favorite things to do in RPGs is to find a way to make a melee damage-dealing character sad instead of mad. And for the uninitiated, when we talk about sad, we mean single ability score dependent as opposed to mad multiple ability score dependent, right? Now, in D&D 5e, there are actually quite a few ways to do this, right? You can use Shillelagh for your wisdom-based characters, a few levels in Artificer, and the right subclass, and you can do the same thing with Intelligence. And most famously, a single level dip into a Hexblade Warlock will let you use Charisma for both your spellcasting and your attack stat, allowing all the paladins of the world to rejoice, if also feel slightly conflicted about serving both a deity and also an otherworldly patron. What's more, in D&D, if a melee weapon has the finesse property, it means that you can use dexterity for both your bonus to your hit chance and for your bonus to damage. This makes building swift, agile strikers pretty easy to do and quite powerful, since dexterity also benefits so many other things in that system. And since swift, agile strikers are generally my favorite kinds of characters to build and play, that's something that I really like. But then there's Pathfinder. In Pathfinder 2, finesse weapons allow you to use your dexterity modifier to your chance to hit, but not to your bonus to damage. That is still based on your strength modifier, with one exception, and that exception is the Rogue Thief. They reign supreme for characters who want to maximize their dexterity, shirk their strength, and still hit just as hard thanks to their unparalleled ability to place that blade in just the right spot, regardless of how hard they ram it home. So today, I want to build a thief for Pathfinder 2. I love rogues. I actually played a rogue character for years in World of Warcraft, mostly because they didn't have monks at the time, and I loved playing her. I loved being sneaky and stealthy and planting my daggers in the backs of my unsuspecting foes for massive damage and then fading back into the shadows. It's a really fun playstyle, and Pathfinder has a lot of amazing things that they give to rogues to make them feel like the sneaky, nimble, acrobatic masters of subterfuge that no party should leave home without. So I'm going to build this character with a focus on getting their sustained DPR, damage per round, as high as I can, while still trying to make them like the roguiest rogue that I can figure out how to make. The preeminent scout, trap finder, lockpicker, and backstabber possible. Coincidentally, this is also the character that I'm going to be playing in our Pathfinder 2 games that we are starting actually today as of this recording as a second campaign over on our Tales of Veneria channel. My plan is to build the character today exactly like I'm going to be playing it, though I do reserve the right to make a change or two as I see fit, especially as I level up and learn to do do things better. One quick reminder, I am still using just the core rulebook for now with these builds. I know, you really want me to do a magus. Believe me, I do too. But I still feel like I've got to learn to walk before I run, and I'm still kind of toddling along here, doing the best that I can. Thank you for your patience. I'll try to gloss over things just a wee bit more than I did with my first Pathfinder 2 build, the Ninja, from a few weeks ago, but we are still going a bit slowly, so I'm only planning on taking this build to level 9. Better than last time, but still not getting into late game or anything, right? Alright, let's get started. I proudly present Pathfinder episode number 2, The Thief. Huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for this fantastic artwork that he created for this character. He does this every week when I send him character concepts. And while you're checking out that fantastic artwork, let me tell you really quickly about a Kickstarter project that Randall just launched today as of this recording. It's called The Little Game Masters. It's a TTRPG built for kids. There's bright colors, there's really easy mechanics, and it's going to be lots of fun for families to play a fantastic role-playing game together. He's going to have stretch goals for adventure modules to play, and those are going to be written by some really amazing people in the TTRPG community. So I'm going to put a link in the video description to that Kickstarter. Show Randall some love, and let's get this project funded. Thanks, Randall. Before we jump into the build though, I wanted to tell you guys really quick about a new sponsor that I've got for the video this week that I'm really excited about. It's a company called 101 Subclasses, who as of this recording are in the middle of their first ever Kickstarter. And it's for content they've created that's compatible with D&D 5e. Hooray for third-party D&D content creators, let's keep it going, people. Now, their Kickstarter has actually already hit their funding goal. So let me tell you guys what backers of this project from 101 Subclasses are definitely going to be getting, because it is greenlit and going to press. New subclasses. Lots and lots of new, unique, fun, and exciting subclasses. 12 with this project, to be exact, ranging from the cosmic, like the barbarian Path of the Cosmical, to the creepy, like the wizard Flesh Scrivener, to the hilarious, like the horse magic-based sorcerer, the Horserer. What the heck? That's so awesome. Now, depending on what level you back this project at, you can get access to the PDFs of these new subclasses for just a few dollars, print versions of them for just a little bit more, potentially access to their Discord channel, ability to playtest and give feedback to the developers, and even at the highest level, a gnomified artistic version of yourself put into the book. How cool is that? So why not add the option to include an Oath of Entropy paladin into your party? Those guys look sinister. Or one of my favorites, the College of the One-Man Band Bard, who can summon identical illusory bandmates to create an orchestra of one, which is, let's be honest, probably what just about every bard out there really wants to be doing anyway. Needless to say, the team over at 101 Subclasses are really thinking outside of the box here when they're designing and creating these new fantastic subclasses. And what a breath of fresh air thinking outside of the box can be, right? Instead of just slapping an elemental motif on a cleric, how about Divine Domain Gun, or even a warlock whose otherworldly patron is the Broker, allowing you to barter your invocations with other creatures in exchange for tokens or favors. Sounds like something somebody who has already kind of sold their soul in the first place might be really good at, right? Anyway, do yourself a favor and go give Connor and Nick and 101 Subclasses your support. Back this Kickstarter now so that you can take advantage of all the goodies that are available to you when you back a project before it goes to press. Here's the link for you to go to back them. I will put it in the video description, of course, as always. And really, you have so little to lose here. You can back this project for about the price of a hamburger, and that's without the fries and the drink. But you have so very much to gain for even just a small investment. So, huge thanks to 101 Subclasses. Congrats on hitting your funding goal. And let's jump into the build. At level 1, yes, for our class, of course, we are going rogue, like I've said. I know that you're supposed to do the ABCs of character building: ancestry, background, then class. But I like starting with class. Sorry, it's just kind of the most important thing that you choose for your character, so that's where I want to start. Anyway, yes, we're taking Rogue, and as such, our key ability is Dexterity, which means that gets a bump, so now it's a 12. As a Rogue, we are experts in Perception, as well as Reflex and Will saving throws, with trained proficiency in our Fortitude saves, though that will increase later on. The only armor we have training in is light armor. Our weapon selection is limited to simple weapons and a few others, and then we get a monstrous number of skills that we're trained in. First up, we get Stealth, and then 7 more in addition to that. That's a ton. As for which ones we should take proficiency in, I would recommend Acrobatics, Athletics, Deception, Diplomacy, Intimidation, Medicine, and Performance. I don't see all of those as strictly necessary, of course, though I would say that Stealth, Acrobatics, and Intimidation are kind of must-haves for the character that I'm trying to build today. As a level 1 rogue, we do pick our rogue subclass, which is known as our racket. And as I've mentioned, we're going to go with the thief racket. Though both ruffian and scoundrel, the other two options, do look like a lot of fun to build around as well. Thieves are awesome in this game. First up, we get trained proficiency in the thievery skill, naturally. And then, most importantly for me, we're told that when we attack with a finesse melee weapon, it has to have the finesse trait. We can add our dexterity modifier to damage instead of our strength modifier. And again, I think it's the only way to do this in Pathfinder 2e. Correct me if I'm wrong. As for our ancestry, I'm going to recommend that we go ahead and pick Goblin. What? Not versatile human? I know, right? Don't get used to it. Honestly, for the build that I'm going for today, I really do think that goblins are the best, both for sustained DPR, if only just barely, but also for just overall roguiness. First of all, they get dark vision, and it seems like if I'm going to be a stealthy, scouty rogue who is often slinking through the shadows, I ought to at least be able to see in those shadows and dark places, right? Based on my fairly limited experience of playing Pathfinder 2 thus far, over at the Rules Lawyers channel, check it out there. It seems like dark vision is both a lot harder to come by and a lot more beneficial to have in Pathfinder 2 based on how punishing not being able to see your enemies, or at least see them very clearly, can be. The other main reason I wanted to go Goblin though, I'll get to in a second. Anyway, we get 2 ability boosts from our ancestry, and I'm going to take Dexterity, of course, bumping it to 14, and Charisma, bumping it to 12. Not only do I love the idea of being a charming, rascally rogue, but we are going to be making use of our Charisma in combat some of the time as well, but we'll get to that later. As for our subrace, or Goblin Heritage, I think we should go with Unbreakable. It gives us 4 more hit points, which isn't huge, but it's not nothing, especially since we're going to be on the squishy side with this character for sure. But then also because when Unbreakable Goblins take falling damage, they reduce it as though they had fallen half the distance. And that feels pretty roguelike and nimble, yeah? As for our ancestry feat that we get at level 1, this gets to the other reason that I wanted to go Goblin. I want to take Goblin Weapon Familiarity. This gives us training with the Goblin weapons, the Horse Chopper, and the Dog Slicer. So I spent a lot of time poring over weapons when I was outlining this build, and it seems to me like the Dog Slicer just might be the best weapon for a thief rogue to use. Why? Simple. They look freaking awesome. Okay, fine. The real reason is because not only do they have both the agile and finesse traits, they also have the backstabber trait, which means that we would do an extra +1 damage with them when our opponent is flat-footed, which hopefully they almost always will be. The rapier has some really nice traits too, but I think for pure damage, the Dog Slicer has a slight edge, since as always, I'm trying to push the damage as far as I can. That's what's driving my decision here. Now, this feat also tells us, and this will be important later, that for the purpose of determining proficiency, martial goblin weapons, which the Dog Slicer is, are considered simple weapons. Remember that. For our background, I think I'd like to take the Acrobat background. It's not strictly necessary. You could make almost anything work, so long as it gave us a bonus to either dexterity or charisma, but acrobat just felt right for the concept for me, and gives us the steady balance skill feat as well, which tells us that whenever we get a success on a balance check, it counts as a critical success instead. And for the uninitiated, balance is a move action that you take to move across like a narrow surface or uneven ground. It requires an acrobatics check. You're flat-footed while you're taking this move action, and even a normal success makes the area you're moving across difficult terrain. For us, with a critical success, you just move across it at full move speed, so you can just hop along those sharp rocks or along that tightrope, no problem. You're great at second story work, right? So yes, with this background, we get to increase our dexterity, bumping it to a 16, and then bump one other ability score of our choice, and I'm going to take charisma, bumping it to 14. We then get to choose our final 4 ability score boosts, and I'm going to go dexterity, taking it to 18, charisma, taking it to 16, and then wisdom and constitution, bumping each of them to 12. Did he seriously just leave his constitution at a 12? I know. I'm crazy. I am constantly sacrificing my own defense and well-being for the sake of better damage. You could, of course, take a different route. You might not care quite as much about your charisma and choose to bump your constitution instead. I kind of like glass cannons, so I don't feel too bad about it, but you do you. For our starting equipment, I want to grab 2 dog slicers, and I'm assuming that as a goblin, your GM would be okay with this, right at level 1, even though they are considered uncommon weapons. I mean, come on, we're a goblin, we took a feat for it and everything. But then also, I'd grab a short bow and some arrows in case we need to make ranged attacks, leather armor, thieves' tools, and then probably even healer's tools, unless you already have like redundancy in your party for people who know their way around treat wounds. Getting all of this isn't going to leave you with a lot of money left over, so I'd just say get whatever other basic necessities you need and can afford. As for the class feat that we get at level 1, I think I'm going to recommend taking Pathfinder. This might be an unpopular opinion. I've been reading some things and people don't think it's very good. But see, while I love that while you're in exploration mode in Pathfinder, that is not fighting, you get to choose to kind of do a certain job or take on a certain role or activity right in the party, like constantly casting a cantrip, or trying to recall knowledge about where you are, or scouting to give your party a +1 to their initiative rolls, or trying to avoid notice, i.e. being stealthy or sneaky, or searching, i.e. trying to find traps and hidden doors, right? But the big problem is, unless you spec your character for it, you can't do more than one of those things at a time. Something that I learned the hard way during my last Pathfinder game with Ronald, the rules lawyer. I was this very dexterous and stealthy monk who was trying to stealth ahead of the party and kind of scout along without being seen by potential enemies around blind corners, right? But since I was technically trying to avoid notice instead of searching, I just walked right into a tripwire that dumped a bunch of boulders on my head and took like half of my HP away. Rookie mistake, monk. Learn to rogue. With the Trap Finder feat, we not only get a +1 bonus to our checks to find traps, as well as to our AC and saves against them if they get triggered. But even if we're not actively searching, we get a check to find traps anyway. That to me kind of feels like a must-have for a stealthy, scouty rogue. Doesn't really help increase our damage, of course, but actually really lets us better fulfill the role that I think any good rogue would be trying to fulfill, right? Sneakily scouting ahead while also trying to help their party avoid those nasty traps. Rogues also get the sneak attack feature here, which tells us that if we strike a flat-footed enemy with an agile or finesse weapon, and again, dog slicers are both of those things, then we deal an extra 1d6 precision damage. That just means you do the same type of damage as what the weapon dealt. And this happens with every single strike, so it can really add up. The sneak attack damage scales by an extra d6 at 5th level, 11th level, and then finally 17th level. We also get the surprise attack feature, not the same thing as sneak attack. This just says that if we roll deception or stealth for initiative, creatures that haven't acted yet on that first round are flat-footed to us. That's some really nice synergy and helps us not have to worry about flanking quite so much, at least during that first round. And oftentimes it can be difficult to get into flanking position on the first round, so that's great. We also get a skill feat here at level 1, like all classes, but rogues uniquely get a skill feat every single level instead of every even numbered level. So that's a ton of skill feats. They also get skill increases every single level. So playing a rogue just by default can make you a really great skill monkey, right? Tons of utility and flavor and things you can do to really make your rogue unique thanks to all of these skill increases and skill feats. It's really cool. Of course, I still kind of feel like my understanding of skill feats is second only to my understanding of spells in Pathfinder when it comes to stuff that I don't know enough about. So I guess this week I'm just a glutton for punishment because we get a ton of skill feats on this character. As for our very first one, I'm going to take Intimidating Glare. This tells us that we can attempt to demoralize an enemy with merely a sinister gaze instead of like verbally saying something to them. As a result, demoralize becomes a visual action, not an auditory one. You just look at them menacingly and they poop their pants. It's great. They don't have to be able to hear you. They don't have to be able to share a language with you, which means you will be able to more effectively demoralize just about anyone. As a refresher, let's review what demoralize does because it's important to this build. It takes an action and then you basically threaten your target, right? If they're within 30 feet of you, you make an intimidation check against their will DC. Normally, if you don't speak the same language or they can't hear you, then you have a -4 penalty to that check, but not for us now. If you succeed on the check, your target is frightened 1, frightened 2 if you critically succeed, meaning that they basically have a -1 penalty to everything, including their attacks, their saves, their DCs, and yes, even their armor class. And this lasts until the end of their next turn. This is a really strong use of pretty much any character's action in Pathfinder, especially if you spec for it right. And I really wanted to give it a go on this character. Now, importantly and unfortunately, don't forget that regardless of the outcome, the target is immune to your attempts to demoralize them for 10 minutes. So you can't just do this round after round on the same target. But you could pick different targets to do it to, right? And still really benefit your party thereby. I did want to kind of dive into this question. Should we be using demoralize as one of our actions every single round when there's an enemy who we have not yet demoralized? I'm gonna go on a little bit of a tangent here, but I'm begging you to stay with me because I think this is really important. In Pathfinder, everybody says don't use all 3 of your actions to just make attacks. That third attack almost never hits thanks to the multiple attack penalty, right? And instead, you need to be doing things like feinting or demoralizing or aiding or hiding or trying to recall knowledge and not just making attacks all the time. And I get it. That totally makes sense. Making a third attack on your turn is going to come at a -10 or a -8 if you're using an agile weapon penalty to hit. Unless you're a flurry ranger, I guess, then you should probably be attacking all the time. And yes, the numbers will often suggest that you'd be better off doing something else. Not just for your own benefit, but for your party's as well. But I mean, is that always true? Of course not. When is it not true? That totally depends. It depends on your party, what they're doing, how hard they hit. It depends on your enemy, how close to death are they, what are their saving throws like, what's their armor class. Now, I can't know what your party is like, what classes they are, how tactical they like to play, what equipment they're using or spells they're casting. And no, for those of you who often ask, I'm not going to start doing videos of optimized parties. That's just like a month's worth of work. Anyway, since I can't know anything about your companions, we sort of have to build these characters in a vacuum. What's the best thing that you can do, regardless of what your friends are doing? And in that case, we can at least make calculations based on enemy armor class, right? So, is making 3 attacks always a bad idea? Not necessarily. If I know your hit chance and whether or not the enemy is flanked or otherwise flat-footed, we can actually calculate at what enemy armor class you would be better off demoralizing with one of your actions versus trying to make that ill-advised third attack, right? Assuming, of course, that you don't need to use that action to move to get into place, etc., etc. And for those of you who are new to this channel, I mean, figuring out that kind of info, like at what AC is it more beneficial to do one thing versus another, is sort of the whole reason I started this channel in the first place. And this is the reason that I started putting everything into spreadsheets and started graphing them. I just get kind of tired of overgeneralized advice. Don't attack 3 times on your turn. It's a waste. Because surely there is a point at which it actually might make sense to at least consider doing so. And I want to know exactly what that point might be. And then I want to stick it in a little spreadsheet and graph it out so I can compare it to other builds so I can sleep at night. Anyway, we'll try and define that point when we get to the damage reports later. At level 2, we get another rogue feat, of course, and I think I would like to take mobility. There are several I would love, actually. Your next is especially tempting since it can potentially give us a bonus to demoralize, and it's super sinister. But mobility really adds to like the nimble and lithe character concept that I'm going for here. It lets you avoid triggering reactions from enemies, like attacks of opportunity, for example, when you move, so long as you only move half your move speed or less when you stride. Flanking enemies is so important, really for any melee character, but especially for this backstabber. And I want to be able to do so with impunity as much as possible. We get our first skill increase at this level, and yes, like I said, rogues get one every level. We can either become trained in a skill we're not trained in, or bump a trained skill up to expert proficiency. And I think we ought to bump our stealth skill up to expert here. Not only so that we can become more stealthy ourselves, but so we can take the skill feat Quiet Allies, which has prerequisites of being both level 2 and having expert stealth proficiency. This feels like almost like a poor man's Pass Without Trace. With Quiet Allies, if we're trying to avoid notice while exploring, and our allies follow the expert, which basically lets them mimic you and thereby get a bonus to their stealth rolls, you now would just roll a single stealth roll for the entire group, and although you have to use the lowest modifier of the group for that check, it still greatly decreases the likelihood that one of you would fail the check if you had to, say, roll 4 stealth checks, right? Anyway, this is nice in a pinch if you all need to be sneaky together, like Scooby, Shaggy, Daphne, Velma, and Fred. And then, yes, at level 2, if you're playing with the free archetype rule, which apparently the vast majority of Pathfinder players do, then we also get an archetype feat here. I'm not going to explain what this is or why I'm using it, but feel free to watch this short here that explains it, or argue about whether or not you think I should do so in the comments. As for the archetype that I want, I'm gonna go with the Ranger dedication. For now, this gives us training in the survival skill, and it also lets us use the Hunt Prey action. With Hunt Prey, we basically pick a target as our prey, and from that point on we gain bonuses to seek or track them. It lasts until we make our preparations again at the end of a long rest, or until we designate a new creature as our prey. We will make a little use of this later, though it does offer some decent utility when you're trying to find somebody who's hidden or tracking someone, right? At level 3, we get our first general feat, and I think I want to take Incredible Initiative. It just gives us a flat +2 to our initiative rolls. And considering that, again, enemies who haven't gone yet in combat are going to be flat-footed to us thanks to surprise attack, going before our enemies feels especially important on this character. For our skill increase at this level, I think we should bump Thievery up to expert here. Not only because, I mean, we're a rogue and we need to be as good at picking locks and disarming traps as possible, but also because it would give us access to the skill feat Wary Disarmament, which is what I want to take for our skill feat here. That has a prerequisite of being expert in Thievery. Wary Disarmament tells us that if we do accidentally set off a trap while trying to disarm it, we get a +2 circumstance bonus to our armor class or saving throw against it. Now remember that both this and the Trap Finder rogue feat that we took give a circumstance bonus to detonated traps, and because of the way bonuses work in Pathfinder, since they are both circumstance bonuses, we don't get to add both of them, we just take the better one, right? So it's not a +3, it's just a +2 now. But you know, hey, +2 is better than +1, and everybody keeps telling me that every +1 counts in Pathfinder, and they always do that too when they tell me that. We also get Deny Advantage at Rogue 3, and this is pretty cool. It keeps us from being flat-footed to hidden, undetected, or flanking creatures, so long as they are not higher level than us. And holy cow, fighting creatures that are higher level than you in Pathfinder 2e is so painful. Anyway, I just really like that we get to be like, hey, I'm the one who fights dirty here. You can't pull that trick on me, kind of thing. At level 4, we get another rogue feat, and I want to take Dread Striker. It gives us some nice potential synergy, very simply, if your enemy is frightened, like for example if you've demoralized them, then they are also flat-footed to you. Now, we should have them flat-footed on the first round, of course, and then ideally later as we've got them flanked. But of course, the best laid plans of mice and men aft gone agley. So having a backup way to get them flat-footed is really nice. And since I am thinking that we'll be demoralizing fairly frequently on this character, this just gives us some nice kind of backup redundancy. Since, especially as a rogue, having the enemy flat-footed all the time is so important thanks to our sneak attack damage, right? And the little bonus we get from our backstabbing dog slicers. As for the ranger archetype feat that we would get here at level 4, I want to take Basic Hunter's Trick, which lets us take a first or second level ranger feat. And for that feat, I would go with Twin Takedown. This is a flourish action that we can do once per round, and it basically lets us make 2 strikes for the cost of a single action, one with each weapon that we're holding in each hand. You do apply your multiple attack penalty as normal, so if you're wielding 2 agile weapons, which we are, then the second attack of course would be made at a -4 to hit, not a -5, right? Now, the big bummer is that this only works against our target that's been designated as our hunted prey, which yes, takes an action to do. So it really only helps our action economy if we're attacking our hunted prey target for more than 1 round. But that's a fairly common occurrence, and it also has the potential benefit of adding the damage together for the purpose of overcoming enemy resistance, right? Though this can backfire if the enemy has weakness to your attacks for some reason, right? Because they're just added together, they'd only get the weakness once. So I would avoid using Twin Takedown in that scenario. As for our skill feat at this level, I think even though I probably overused Assurance in my last build, I do still really like Assurance Athletics on this character, which is what I would go for here. The thing is, Athletics is used a lot in Pathfinder, from climbing to jumping to trying to grapple or trip an enemy. Now, I'm not necessarily planning on using Athletics on this character for this build in combat, but it just seems like there are always going to be times when having at least a decent chance to succeed at an athletics check would be important. And where Assurance really shines, I think, is when you're not planning on increasing the ability score that the skill that you're taking Assurance in is tied to, so that you can still get decent kind of guaranteed checks for that skill anyway, right? As a reminder, with Assurance, you pick a skill that you want to take Assurance in, and then anytime you make a skill check with that skill, instead of rolling, your check is simply a 10 plus your proficiency bonus. No other bonuses or, importantly, penalties are applied, and that can be really handy if you've got a nasty penalty against you for some reason, right? Keep in mind that your proficiency bonus does not include your ability score modifier, just your bonus from your training level. In our case, that's a +2 as we are just trained in athletics, right? Plus your level. That means at the moment, we would have an automatic 16 to our athletics checks with a measly 10 strength, and that's going to go up every single level. And I just really love knowing that we can automatically succeed at least mildly difficult athletics skill checks when need be, while still being sad, right? Not having to worry about bumping that strength score. As for our skill increase, I think since we've got thievery and stealth at expert now, I want to take intimidation to expert. It might not necessarily be what you'd think of as like a quintessential rogue skill, but yeah, intimidation, super important for the demoralizing that we'd want to be doing in combat, especially versus higher enemy AC targets. So getting those checks as boosted as we possibly can will be super important for this build. At level 5, we get a truckload of stuff. First up, ability score boosts. I'm so in love with the way that Pathfinder does ability score increases, just letting us here boost 4 ability scores by 2 each, unless that ability score is already at an 18 or higher, in which case it only goes up by 1. I want to keep boosting the same 4 that we've kind of been doing all along here, so we take dexterity to 19, Charisma to 18, Constitution to 14, and Wisdom to 14. We get an Ancestry feat here as well, and I think we ought to take Very Sneaky. I mean, I am a rogue, right? How can I not take a feat called Very Sneaky, regardless of the actual mechanical benefit? With this feat, you can move 5 feet faster while sneaking, and that typically happens at half move speed. Also, it allows you to end your sneak action without being behind cover or concealed, so long as you're behind cover or concealed at the end of your turn. This can situationally be a really nice benefit, as in Pathfinder, you can't really just hide and then kind of stealth around everywhere you go. The rules for stealth and sneaking are very specific, and I kind of like it actually. I think it makes it a little easier to adjudicate. As a reminder, here's how it works. If an enemy knows roughly where you are, then if you sneak, you have to not only succeed on your stealth check, but you have to end that sneaking move action behind cover or within concealment. Now, we could potentially use all of our actions on one turn to move from one place of cover to another and still potentially remain undetected, so long as you succeed, of course, on your stealth check versus their perception DC. We also get weapon tricks at Rogue 5, and it's pretty fantastic. Your training increases to expert from trained with the rapier, sap, short bow, and short sword, as well as all simple weapons. Now, you might be thinking, wait, the dog slicer is a martial weapon, so we should stop using it now, right? Wrong. That's why we took goblin weapon familiarity back at level 1. Remember? Goblin martial weapons count as simple weapons for the purpose of determining our proficiency. Now that we have expert proficiency with simple weapons, then our proficiency with the dog slicer also bumps up to expert, giving us an additional +2 to hit. Very nice. What's more, when we get a critical hit with any of these weapons, we get to apply the critical specialization effect for our weapon, and that's really nice. Unfortunately, I think dog slicers are swords, which means if we crit, then the critical weapon specialization effect that kicks in is that the enemy is flat-footed until the start of our next turn. Not that that's bad, and notably, they're just straight up flat-footed, not like flat-footed to only us or anything, right? So yeah, that's not nothing. It's just not going to do much for our damage numbers since I'm already going to be assuming that they're flanked and thus flat-footed. For the skill increase that I want to take at this level, it seems like the roguiest option to go with here would be to bump acrobatics up to expert, making it that much easier to squeeze, balance, etc. And then for the skill feat, I think I'd finally here take something that would help treat wounds in our medicine checks. I think I'd go battle medicine. I'm not 100% convinced on this. Again, if you've got a lot of redundancy here in your group for people who can treat wounds and heal, it might not be as necessary. It just feels like the character who gets the most skill feats should probably do some stuff to improve their treat wounds ability. And battle medicine is really great in that it lets you treat wounds as a single action instead of over 10 minutes like normal, meaning that you could do it in the middle of a fight, right? Just a quick patch job, maybe a shot of morphine. Now, this doesn't remove the wounded condition like treat wounds normally does, and a character can only benefit from this once per day. But still, if you can make that DC 15 medicine skill check, you can heal your ally for 2d8 hit points here with this as a single action, and that could be huge in a fight where you have like an ally that's unconscious and no one else can get to them in time but you, right? Anyway, finally at level 5, don't forget that our sneak attack damage does increase to a 2d6 here. And again, that's for every single successful strike with a finesse or agile weapon, so long as the enemy is flat-footed to us. At level 6, we get another rogue feat. I think we ought to take Skirmish Strike. This lets us strike then step, or step then strike, all with one single action. And again, step, remember, is just 5 feet of movement, but that doesn't provoke reactions. Action economy really seems to be king in Pathfinder 2, and being able to move even just 5 feet before or after attacking an enemy can be a really nice way to either close the gap or force an enemy to waste an action chasing after you on their turn, if nothing else. As for our Ranger archetype feat, there's really nothing we can do here that would give us an increase to our damage, I don't think. There's some nice utility options for sure, but I think I'd probably just go with Ranger Resiliency, which would give us an extra 3 hit points for every Ranger archetype feat that we have, which means an extra 9 hit points for now. That's not amazing, but could often mean the difference between life and death. And again, we're fairly squishy, so I like it. As for our skill increase at this level, since we have Assurance in Athletics, I think I'd like to bump athletics to expert here, just to give us that much more of an edge on those more difficult athletics DCs. Doing so would give us a flat 20 to our athletics check at this level, and that feels pretty fantastic for a character with a 10 strength, and is going to open up some things for us to be able to do on our turn, especially, for example, if like an enemy has a really great will saving throw and thus would be difficult to demoralize, but maybe don't have a great reflex DC, right? In that case, we could just be fighting with one weapon, don't worry about twin takedown, and be trying to trip our enemies on our turn. Stuff like that. The other reason I wanted to get athletics to expert though is because it's a requirement for the skill feat that I would want to take at this level, Powerful Leap. As with most skill feats that we're ending up taking here, I don't really consider this mandatory to the build at all, but Powerful Leap is pretty cool. For those unfamiliar with leaping in Pathfinder, since our move speed is only 25 feet, we can only leap 10 feet horizontally as a single action, meaning that we could only safely clear a 5-foot gap. If we want to go further than that, we have to take the long jump activity, where we would first stride at least 10 feet and then jump, and in that case we would need to make an athletics check where the DC is equal to the distance we're trying to leap. Again, for us, thanks to Assurance and Athletics now, that means we could horizontally leap 20 feet, which would let us clear a 15-foot gap. That's really nice, and with Powerful Leap, that increases by 5 feet to 25 feet, or a 20-foot gap. Perhaps even better though, if we wanted to leap vertically, say to grab a ledge, or maybe the top of a wall, and pull ourselves up, normally we'd only be able to jump 3 feet up, or take the high jump activity to attempt a DC 30, yes, 30 athletics check to increase that to a 5-foot vertical. With Powerful Leap, you can just automatically jump 5 feet vertically, which really just seems fantastic for a character who might be used to second story work. And better yet, there's just something really awesome about a, 3.5 foot tall goblin jumping 5 feet into the air vertically. Dude's got hops. All right. At level 6, it is time for our first damage report, but before we get into it, I have a lot of things to say. They're important, so bear with me, please. First of all, a lot of you commented on my first Pathfinder build about a couple of things. 1. I should assume magic items and runes, since the game truly does assume that characters are advancing in power at a certain rate thanks to their improved magical equipment. And perhaps the easiest way to account for this is to just use what is known as the automatic bonus progression table from the Game Mastery Guide. This is found on page 196. And as much as I would love to just jump in and start telling you what runes and magic items you should start trying to get for each character build, I'm just not quite there yet in my confidence level. So I think I'm just going to stick to the automatic bonus progression table. It feels like a nice way to be kind of uniform across builds. Using this table is actually a variant rule that removes item bonuses to rolls and DCs that you typically get from magic items, while keeping other special abilities for those magic items, but just not the numerical increases, right? Whether you use this variant rule or not, it's a nice way for me to just kind of easily assume what the expectation is for numerical increases that a player would have at the appropriate level. Does that make sense? At this level, it assumes that we have bonuses to a couple of skills and to our armor class, but as for damage, it assumes an additional +1 to hit with all weapons from attack potency, and 2 damage dice from your weapon instead of just 1 damage die from your weapon. That's a pretty significant increase. So yes, I am going to start including these things for now. The other most common comment that I got in that ninja video was about enemy armor class. Thanks to the building creatures rules from the Game Mastery Guide on page 61, we can get a relatively safe assumption on what would be considered a low, moderate, high, and extreme enemy AC based on their level. So when I do damage reports for my Pathfinder builds, I'm going to use that table to guide me, meaning that at this level, a 21 enemy AC is considered low, 23 moderate, 24 high, and 27 extreme. So the graphs and the spreadsheets that I'm going to put out for these Pathfinder builds are simply going to show the damage that we can expect to do at each of those 4 enemy armor classes: low, moderate, high, extreme. This both makes it much easier to crunch the numbers and accurately account for the different critical rules in Pathfinder, which makes me super happy. And yes, it means that in order to start comparing my Pathfinder builds to one another consistently on like an apples to apples basis, I had to go back and adjust the ninja numbers to reflect these two changes. The spreadsheet has been updated, so if you want to find them in the video description on that video, you can do so. And in case you're wondering, the numbers look way better when assuming magic items, of course, and when properly accounting for Pathfinder's critical rules. Okay, with all of that out of the way, let's discuss what combat is going to look like for us here at level 6. Round 1 is a bit of a setup round. We would use Hunt Prey on our target. We probably have to take a move action to get into range, right? And then we would just use Twin Takedown for a third action. After that, I'm going to assume that our target is both marked as our prey and flanked. Understanding that that's not always going to be the case. Best case scenario here, right? So you would potentially then use Twin Takedown for your first action, then use your second and third actions to make strikes at a -8 penalty to hit, which sucks, I know, or you would demoralize first, then Twin Takedown, using your final action potentially to attack, again still at a -8 to hit. And here's the interesting thing. If we're just thinking about vacuums here, the numbers seem to indicate that you might only want to demoralize at the extreme enemy AC, which is a 27 at this level. And that's with me just assuming that when you attempt to demoralize, you're going to succeed. And while that may be fairly likely against most enemies, it's by no means a guarantee, right? Now, I know many of you are shouting at the screen right now, and I get it. Let me be clear here. Your team will almost assuredly always be better off with you demoralizing against an enemy where demoralize is not on cooldown for them, as it lowers everything they do by 1 or even 2 if you crit succeed for an entire round. I'm just trying to show what the damage would look like if we were solely focused on trying to do as much damage as possible every single round. I'm not suggesting that you do so. Okay. At the moment, we have a +15 to hit if you include the +1 from our automatic bonus progression, +4 from dexterity, +4 from expert training in our weapons, and then our level. And don't forget, I am assuming a flat-footed enemy here. Each of our attacks then would do 2d6 from the dog slicer, again adding in that extra d6 from automatic bonus progression, plus another 2d6 for sneak attack, +1 for backstabber, +4 for our dexterity modifier. So that's 46 +5 damage for each attack that lands. And thus, against an enemy with a low AC, which again is a 21 here, we would on average do 57 damage per round. And against an enemy with a high armor class here, which would be a 24, that would be 41 DPR. And okay, compared to the only other Pathfinder build I've done to date, that's a few points of damage less, but it's pretty close. And perhaps more importantly, as much as I love that monk ninja build from last week, this character brings a solid debuff option and a ton of roguish utility along with them. So doing a few points of damage less per round might be well worth it. And check out the amazing description that the team over at Describe wrote for this character. They're not a sponsor, but I wanted to read it anyway because it's amazing. If you notice them at all, it will be with your peripherals. Constantly at your back, gnashing teeth sending shivers down your hamstrings. The squat goblin with the bulbous head seems to hound your every step, masking the subtle creaks of their leather armor by moving in sinister synchronicity with your longer, louder stride. Crossed over their shoulders are 2 single-edged blades, crafted from crude slabs of contemptuous steel, so heavily notched they appear deliberately serrated. Patinated by gallons of canine blood, the nightmare metal seems to weep red tears from the flanged holes bored through each blade. That same red stain seems to ripple across the goblin's gray skin in the form of corrugated rashes, which ravage the creature like storm-tossed waves. So good. I feel like I'm starting to run long, so buckle up. At level 7, we get evasion. It's kind of like the D&D version, but it increases our reflex saves to masters. That's another +2. And then if we succeed on a reflex save, it's automatically a critical success, which yes, will often mean that you take no damage from that fireball or whatever it is that you're trying to save against. We get vigilant senses, that increases our perception proficiency to master as well. We get weapon specialization, which adds 2 damage to our weapon attacks if we're experts, which we are. We get another general feat, and I'm gonna take expeditious search. This lets us search an area in half the time as usual, and that definitely seems useful if we are on the move and just want to be the best trap and secret door finder out there, right? For our skill increased, now that we are level 7, we can increase our skills to master level. So let's start doing that, I think, with stealth. And as a master in stealth, now for our skill feat here, we can take foil senses, which basically means we're considered to be taking extra precaution against senses other than vision. If an enemy has tremor sense, if they're using smell or hearing as their primary sense, then you're stepping lightly or making sure that you're downwind from them, etc. It's just one more way to ensure that you remain the master of stealth. At level 8, for our rogue feat, I would take opportune backstab. I think there's a lot that I want, but this is sort of like an opportunity attack in that it lets you use your reaction to strike an enemy, but instead of working when the enemy moves, it works when an ally of yours hits the enemy with an attack and you're in reach. And honestly, I think I might rather have this than opportunity attack. It seems like it would get triggered more frequently than opportunity attack. Maybe I'm wrong. Should I account for it in my damage reports? Hang on a minute, because first we need to talk about the ranger archetype feat that I want to take here. And I want to take advanced hunter's trick, which lets us take a higher level hunter's feat, and I want to take disrupt prey. Disrupt prey also potentially grants us an extra attack in a round, but this time it triggers if our hunted prey uses a manipulate or move action. So kind of like opportunity attack, but the best part is that it doesn't even require our reaction. It's a free action. I know. I was surprised too. So, okay. I feel like the likelihood of either your target being attacked by an ally on your turn or your target using a manipulate or move action on their turn is like really high. Surely it's got to be like, what, 75% chance? I don't know for sure, but when I crunch the numbers, that's what I'm going to assume. For our skill increase this level, I want to take acrobatics to master. Not only does it fit our character concept really well, but it's also a prerequisite for the skill feat that I want to take at this level, which is kip up. And that lets us stand up from prone without triggering reactions. So now we're very rarely going to be triggering any kinds of reactions with our movement, whether we're prone, whether we're just striding half our move speed. I'm not sure how often you're going to be finding yourself prone in Pathfinder at around level 8, or how often you're going to be fighting enemies with like opportunity attacks. It seems like avoiding them in this way is a really great idea though. And then finally for us today, at level 9, we get another ancestry feat, and I think I would take Cave Climber. This simply gives us a climbing speed of 10 feet, which feels thematically really appropriate. In case you didn't know, for most characters, climbing requires an athletics check of a difficulty determined by your GM based on what it is that you're trying to climb, and even with assurance, we wouldn't be able to pass difficult DCs, right? Even if we did, we'd only be able to climb 5 feet per action and would be flat-footed while doing so. Now that we have a climb speed, we've doubled our climb move speed, aren't flat-footed, and don't have to worry about that athletics check. At Rogue 9, we also get Debilitating Strike, and this is a really great ability that tells us if we hit a flat-footed creature and deal damage, as a free action, we can either reduce their move speed by 10 feet or make them enfeebled 1. And either one lasts until the end of our next turn. Enfeebled just lowers all of their strength-based checks and rolls by the value of their enfeebled condition, right? Including attack rolls, potentially, if they're using strength for attacks, as most creatures do. So yeah, pretty fantastic. Great Fortitude makes our Fortitude saves increase to Expert, which is very welcome. And then for our skill increase, I think I would take Intimidation to Master. This obviously will help us land our Demoralizes more often, among other things, and is a prerequisite for the skill feat that I want at this level, and that would be Terrified Retreat. This is so great. It says that if we critically succeed at demoralizing an enemy, and they are lower level than us, so this is something that might not happen a ton, but in that case, they would be also fleeing for 1 round. Maybe this won't happen all that often, but when it does, you're gonna feel so cool just scaring the bejeebies out of your enemy so much that they feel forced to run from you, and yeah, doing so would let you take a free action Disrupt Prey attack on them too. Okay, for our level 9 damage report. The only things that have changed for us since last check are we've increased our damage by 2 per strike, thanks to weapon specialization, and I'm assuming that we've got a 75% chance to get another attack on our turn, thanks to both Disrupt Prey and Opportune Backstab. And actually, unless I'm mistaken, since one is a free action and the other uses our reaction, there might be times where you'll get to use both on your turn. Maybe I should increase that chance to 90%? Whatever. Now, we have not seen any additional increases to our damage from the automatic bonus progression table. Next level, we would have increased our chance to hit by another +1, though we have seen bumps to our perception, saving throws, and skills from that table. Anyway, at this point, when fighting against what would be considered a low enemy AC, which is listed as 25, we would do 74 damage per round. And against an enemy with a high AC, which would be a 28, it would be 53 DPR. And again, the numbers here say to not demoralize until the extreme enemy AC of 31, but this time the numbers are a lot closer. In fact, they're almost identical, even at just the high enemy AC. And even if they weren't, your team is almost always going to be better off with you demoralizing whenever you can, almost every time, at least against enemies where you have a high likelihood of succeeding on your intimidation check, right? Now, I'm not sure how this would compare to the ninja at level 9. I didn't get that far with them, but it's not a huge increase to the damage, right? So let's talk about that a little further in our final thoughts. So yeah, here's the thing that kind of surprised me about this build. I know that bounded accuracy is a big deal in Pathfinder. The math is tight, all of those things. But I was admittedly a little bit shocked to realize that we saw almost no increases to our actual damage numbers between the two damage reports, except from that 75% of a hit that I was accounting for from Disrupt Prey and or Opportune Backstab. We got a +2 to our strikes from weapon specialization, but the biggest increases came from that assumption I was making about getting yet another attack on our turn, right? In fact, even though our plus to hit chance was increasing thanks only to our character level going up, the supposed enemy ACs of the various target enemy difficulties actually increased by more than our own plus to hit chance did. Enemy AC between level 6 and level 9 went up by 4, while our plus to hit chance only went up by 3. So had it not been for those attacks that we were hopefully making outside of our own turn, which thank goodness wouldn't suffer from the multiple attack penalty, right? Our comparative DPR would have actually been pretty much just flat between level 6 and level 9. It did go up a bit, but thanks pretty much exclusively to the feats that we took. And I'll admit that I was a little surprised by that and left wondering if someone had built this character but decided to take different feats at level 8 for both the rogue feat and the ranger archetype, how dismayed might they have been to just see their damage kind of staying the same as they leveled up. Enemy hit points are increasing, but we wouldn't have been doing any more damage to them than we were to enemies at level 6. They're also presumably hitting harder. Now, of course, the levels that we picked to do damage reports at are a bit arbitrary. If we would have gone one more level, level 10 would have seen us get a bump to our dexterity modifier, plus another +1 bonus to hit from the automatic bonus progression chart, like I said. Level 11 would have given us a bump to our sneak attack damage. That would have been a pretty big deal. So it's not like there's like no scaling at all going on here. But I guess in the end, it kind of made me feel like maybe doing some character optimization in Pathfinder actually is important, right? Regardless, I really love the character we ended up creating. All of those skill increases and skill feats make me feel like I could truly live out my very best sneak, thief, backstabby, acrobaty life with this character. And the fact that the damage that they're dealing was pretty close to the ninja, which didn't do a whole lot other than just deal damage and maybe be better suited to take a few more punches to the face, makes me feel pretty great about the results. Especially when you factor in that sweet, sweet demoralize that will potentially have your enemies fleeing from your glistening blades with terror. But anyway, that's the build for the week. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed putting it together. I hope you know how much I love you, because I do. Thank you for all that you do for me, for the channel. I am very grateful for you. I hope that you have a fantastic day and a great week, and that you stay safe and be good and be kind, and that I see you again really soon. But until then, take care. Bye. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Got a new camera, got a new setup in my office. I'm a little nervous for how it's gonna go today, but I got a dragon lamp, I got Shepherd watching my back, so I'm kind of excited about the new space. I just gotta figure out the audio-visual stuff now. Your touch blurred my vision. It's your world and I'm just in it. Even sober, I'm not thinking straight. 'Cause I'm off my face, in love with you. I'm out my head, so into you. And I don't know how you do it, but I'm forever ruined by you. Ooh. I'm not a huge Justin Bieber fan, but my niece is getting married this weekend, and she wants me to sing that song at her wedding, so I'm trying to learn it. I don't know. It's not a bad song, honestly. There's a fly in here. It's just a little, like, fruit fly. Get it? Got it. And now I'm remembering that I forgot to add that to the math. Is it judicate or adjudicate? Is judicate a word? Well, don't even say that. Don't even say that. I don't need to say any of that. Don't say that. Come on, chair. Why you squeak sometimes and not other times?